welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. It was an ordinary Tuesday when the fabric of my reality began to unravel. The afternoon sun cast long shadows on the pavement as I took my usual stroll through the bustling streets of the city, weaving through the throng of faceless pedestrians, all lost in their own routines. As I approached a quaint little café that had opened just a few months back, a flash of familiar scarlet caught my eye. There stood Viola, my wife of 7 years, looking every bit as radiant as the day we met, except she was not alone. My pace slowed as I watched her laughter mingle with the deep tones of a man I had never seen before. They entered the café together, her hand brushing against his in a way that sent a sharp sting through my heart. Driven by a mix of curiosity and a growing dread, I followed them inside, pretending to fiddle with my phone as I ordered a coffee at the counter. My eyes scanned the café, finally landing on a secluded corner where they had settled. I chose a nearby table, my back ostensibly to them, while my attention remained fixed on their reflection in the window. Their body language was unmistakable. The way she leaned in close, her fingers tentatively exploring the fabric of his sleeve, was a silent betrayal. As they got up and walked toward the restrooms, my mind raced with possibilities. Had he kidnapped her? Was she in danger? Or was something far more ordinary and yet equally devastating unfolding? I waited for what felt like hours, though only minutes had passed. When they didn't return, I rose, my legs shaky, and walked towards the restroom. The door was slightly ajar, and the sounds that emerged confirmed my worst fears. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs as I pushed the door open to reveal Viola, her blouse undone, lost in the arms of this stranger. The shock of the scene before me rendered me speechless. Viola's eyes met mine in a fleeting, guilty glance before she hurriedly adjusted her clothes. The man, unfazed, simply smirked and slipped past me. I stood frozen, the noise of the café fading into a deafening silence that enveloped me. Viola, how could you? My voice was a hoarse whisper, drowned out by the pounding in my ears. I'm sorry, it's not what it looks like, she stammered, her voice trembling. But it was exactly as it looked. The image was burned into my mind, an irrevocable testament to her infidelity. In that moment, a cold resolve settled over me. Revenge, a concept I had never entertained before, now pulsed through my veins with clarity and purpose. I needed to act, to reclaim some semblance of control over the shattered pieces of my trust. We're done, Viola. I want a divorce, I said, my voice firm despite the chaos swirling inside me. Her pleas followed me as I walked away, but they fell on deaf ears. My mind was already racing with plans, with ways to make her regret her betrayal as deeply as I mourned it. As I exited the café, the sun had begun to set, casting a glow that seemed to mock my newfound darkness. The journey ahead would be fraught with pain and vengeance, but it was a path I was now bound to tread. The intrigue of how I would exact my revenge would unfold in the chapters to come, a story of betrayal turned into a calculated quest for retribution. The morning after my world had crumbled, the city seemed indifferent to my turmoil, bustling as usual under a cloudless sky. I awoke with a lingering bitterness, a silent vow to not let Viola's betrayal go unanswered. Today was not just another day, it was the day I would begin to set my plan into motion. I started by seeking an old acquaintance, Leo, a private investigator known for his discretion and effectiveness. The café was noisy, filled with the clatter of dishes and the hum of conversation, but our corner was a quiet bubble of conspiracy. Leo, I need your help, I began, sliding a photo of Viola across the table. His eyes narrowed as he picked it up, recognizing the gravity of the situation from my tone. What's the job? His voice was low, almost inaudible against the backdrop of café noises. I want you to follow her. Find out everything. Who she meets, where she goes, everything, I said, my words clipped with a barely contained rage. You got it. Anything specific you're looking for? Leo's pen hovered over his notepad, ready to jot down every detail. Anything that can help me in the divorce. Proof of her infidelity, her lies. I want her to lose everything, I replied, the last words tasting like ash in my mouth. Leo nodded, understanding the assignment without judgment. Consider it done. I'll get you everything you need. As I left the café, the second part of my plan began to take shape. Viola loved her reputation, it was as precious to her as any jewel. I knew that if I could tarnish it, if I could expose her betrayal not just in court but to all who knew her, the victory would feel more complete. I spent the afternoon drafting anonymous letters. Each was carefully worded, designed to sow seeds of doubt and scandal among Viola's friends and colleagues. I included no specifics, only hints of a secret too scandalous to ignore, ensuring her phone would soon be inundated with whispers and speculation. By evening, I was ready. I mailed the letters from a post office across town, taking no chances on being seen. As I dropped each envelope into the slot, a sense of grim satisfaction washed over me. This was only the beginning, the first wave in my campaign of retribution. Later, I sat alone in my apartment, the silence a stark contrast to the tumultuous thoughts in my head. My phone buzzed, and I glanced at the screen to see a message from Leo with an attachment, a video file. My pulse quickened as I opened it. The footage was grainy, but unmistakable. Viola, laughing as she entered a hotel with the same man from the café. They were unaware of the camera, lost in their deceitful bliss. I saved the video, another piece of ammunition. Tonight, I had laid the groundwork for what was to come. Viola's web of lies would soon unravel, and I would be there to witness every moment of her downfall. As I drifted to sleep, the plans for the next steps of my revenge began to form, promising more action, more confrontation. The intrigue of how I would continue to navigate this path of retribution was yet to be fully revealed, but one thing was certain, I was not finished, and neither was this story. The morning light did little to lift the weight of anticipation that hung over me. Today, I was to confront Viola with the evidence of her infidelity. It was not just a confrontation, it was a declaration of war, the point of no return in our crumbling relationship. I arrived at our home earlier than usual. The sound of my keys in the door echoed through the silent hallway, a prelude to the storm that was about to break. Viola was in the kitchen, a picture of domestic tranquility as she sipped her coffee. Her calm demeanor irked me, fueling my resolve. "Viola, we need to talk," I stated, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. She turned, her expression shifting from surprise to guarded as she noted the seriousness of my tone. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting her cup down with a faint clink. Without a word, I handed her my phone, the video playing. The color drained from her face as the scenes unfolded, undeniable and damning. Her momentary shock was quickly masked by a veneer of defiance. "This isn't what it looks like," she began, the same futile defense as before. "Don't insult my intelligence, Viola. I've known for a while now." "It ends today," I cut her off, my voice rising in anger. The room filled with a tense silence, heavy with the weight of broken vows. Viola's shoulders slumped slightly, her resistance crumbling under the weight of evidence. "What do you want?" Her voice was resigned, a stark contrast to her earlier vibrancy. "I want a divorce, Viola. And I want it to be smooth and quick. Otherwise, this video goes public, along with every other piece of evidence Leo has gathered," I threatened, my words laced with bitterness. Viola paced the room, her mind racing. "You wouldn't dare," she challenged, but her voice lacked conviction. "Try me," I retorted sharply. "And consider your next steps carefully. Your reputation, your career, everything is at stake." As she looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and anger, I felt a twinge of sadness for what had been lost. But the pain of betrayal was stronger, propelling me forward. Fine. I'll sign the papers. But I want something in return, she finally said, her tone shifting to negotiation. What is it? I asked, wary of her motives. Secrecy. I sign everything, give you what you want, but you keep this quiet. No public shaming, she proposed, her eyes scanning mine for signs of agreement. Agreed. But know this, Viola, any sign of foul play, and the deal's off. Everything goes public, I warned, my words final. With the term set, Viola nodded slowly, her defeat etched into every line of her face. As she retreated to gather her things, I stood alone in the kitchen, the victory feeling hollow. I had started this fight seeking retribution, but now, with each step towards its end, I felt less satisfaction and more a sense of profound loss. The day ended with Viola moving out, the silence of her departure marking the end of our shared life. I sat in the quiet aftermath, contemplating the ruins of our marriage. The intrigue of my revenge had sustained me thus far, but as I faced the empty rooms, I wondered about the true cost of this victory. The next steps of my plan remained clouded with uncertainty. My revenge had been exacted, but the echoes of its execution would reverberate in the days to come, the full impact of my actions yet to be seen. The city was cloaked in twilight as I finalized my plans for retribution. The taste of victory was bitter, laced with the cold realization of my loneliness. I had lost Viola, but more than that, I had lost a part of myself to the darkness of revenge. Yet, there was one more act to perform, one final, devastating move to ensure that my betrayal would not go unpunished. I had arranged to meet Viola one last time under the guise of signing the final divorce papers at a remote, upscale restaurant, chosen for its privacy. As I waited, the simmering anger within me was a constant companion, whispering promises of justice. Viola arrived, looking wary but composed. The waiter showed her to the table, where the legal documents lay between us like a battlefield. "I'm surprised you wanted to meet in person," she said, her voice steady but her eyes betraying a hint of fear. "This is the end, Viola. I wanted to make sure we understood each other perfectly before parting ways," I replied, my tone icy. As we signed the papers, the formalities of our separation, my phone vibrated silently in my pocket. It was a signal from Leo. Everything was in place. Tonight, Viola's world would crumble just as mine had. "Everything is settled then," Viola said, a false note of relief in her voice as she closed the folder. "Not everything," I corrected her, my eyes locking with hers. "There's the matter of your betrayal. Did you really think there would be no consequences?" Viola's face paled. "What do you mean?" "We agreed." "The agreement was for silence, not forgiveness," I interrupted. "You see, I know about the others." Confusion flickered across her face, replaced quickly by understanding. "What others?" She feigned ignorance, but her voice quivered. "Not just the man from the café. There were more, weren't there? Leo wasn't just following you, he was investigating deeper. And what he found was enlightening." The color drained from her face. "You have no proof," she whispered. "Proof? Oh, I have more than proof. I have their statements, recorded and ready for the press. And tonight, they'll receive a little package from me, photos, videos, a complete exposé of your infidelities." Viola stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You can't do this. It will ruin me." "That's the point," I said coldly. "You ruined us, Viola. Now, it's your turn to feel that pain." Her eyes were wild, darting around the room as if looking for an escape. "Please, don't do this." "I'll do anything." "Anything?" I scoffed. "It's too late for bargains. You should have thought of that before betraying me." As Viola staggered back, the waiter approached with 2 glasses of champagne, a setup I had arranged earlier. "A toast," I announced, though my voice was devoid of any warmth. "To new beginnings." Viola hesitated, then took the glass, her hand shaking. We clinked glasses, the sound sharp in the tense air. As she took a sip, her expression froze, her eyes widening in terror. "What did you do?" she gasped, the glass slipping from her grasp and shattering on the floor. "Just a little something to ensure you don't cause further harm," I said, my voice a whisper of venom. The poison worked quickly. Viola collapsed, convulsing briefly before stilling. I stood and watched, the finality of my actions washing over me. As I left the restaurant, the realization of what I had done began to settle in. I had crossed a line from which there was no return. Viola was gone, and with her, the last remnants of the man I used to be. The city lights blurred as I walked away, the echoes of our broken vows lingering in the cold night air. The story was over, the final chapter written in darkness and despair. The deception had been revealed, and in our mutual hatred of betrayal, our paths had parted forever.